Economic Development and Planning for the City of Jackson, and I'll kind of, let him introduce himself to the rest of the world, and then we'll talk about all the good stuff that's happening in the City of Jackson that y'all need to know about. Go ahead, brother.
Good morning. Happy Mother's Day to everybody out there in Kamikaze. Thanks for having me today. As he stated, my name is Jhai Keeton. I am the Interim Director of Planning and Development for the City of Jackson. Been rocking and rolling in the City of Jackson since January of 2020. So happy to be here.
Hey, man, so what we try to do on this show, of course, outside of just changing the narrative about our city, we are about, informing the people. I think, and informed people is the people who can make, rational decisions about things. I think that's important. I think the problem with a lot of our folks a lot of times is they just don't know how things work. They don't know who to talk to. They don't have the proper information, so they're not really schooled on the minutia of government. So they just look at things from a cursory level and they make their assessments from that cursory level, not knowing how things work. So, economic development in the City of Jackson is paramount, and in years past, it hasn't had that high of a profile, but within the last month, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here is because we have seen a lot from this department. You guys have developed your own Facebook page separate from the city. You got these events that y'all have been putting on. Y'all are doing a lot of things to raise the profile of your department. So just talk about how it's been since you come on board, because you left for a little while. So talk about that, and talk about coming back and being the interim director, and how you have been initiating the change that has been going on in that department.
Well, love to, man. It's been a cool journey, if I'm being honest. I'll just start with that. So when I came in 2020, I was the Deputy Director of Planning and Development, and I worked under a planner. And that's one thing that when I got here, from the business community, I was hearing them express just the noticeability of the fact that in the Planning and Development Department, there have been a lot of planners. You know what I mean? Harvey Johnson was a planner.
Yes.
We've been planning.
Yeah.
And in the Office of Economic Development, planning and development, economic development tends to, or historically, I guess, kind of played, I don't want to say a backseat. It was always important, I'm sure, to everyone, but because planners ran the planning department, the focus would be on planning.
Right.
Well, when I was recruited to come to the city in 2020 by Robert Blaine, who was an economic development professional, that was my thing. It was, I'm a developer by nature. I'm a creative, and that's the difference in between the disciplines in between planners and developers.
Right.
Planners are regulators by discipline. Yes, you can do this. No, you cannot do that.
Yes.
Developers are creatives. So to be able to be put in a position where we create what we're trying to get to is a yes. And we need to work very closely with the planners. But the reality is we do have a different appetite for creativity and delivering. So in answering the question, bro, once I got in this role, me and the mayor had a conversation, and I let him know that, again, I'm more of a developer than a planner. And I think that my predecessors have done a good job at improving the planning department. We got OpenGov, right now, where people can apply for permits online and check the updates of statuses live, real time. So that's something we should accomplish. We had the transit plan, Connect Jackson. We just rolled out J-Tran about, 2 or 3 months ago. That was something that the planning department had been working on for about 2 years. We started that prior to me leaving. That got delivered, so that's something we should be proud of. And there are other things internally within the department that my predecessors did a great job. Now I think that we're poised and we're better positioned than we've ever been to begin to focus on how do we attract capital, how do we attract investment, how do we attract businesses and a middle-class population to the city of Jackson. And by putting a focus and prioritizing funding and budgets in that direction will yield what it seems like you guys are beginning to see, and I'm glad to hear that from you, because that's part of the plan is, how do we take the resources we have, add value to it, and attract value in exchange? So that's the direction we're going in.
So one of the gripes that you hear from business people is that the city of Jackson is difficult to deal with when it comes to business. The permits that people have to try to acquire, the hoops that they have to jump through. I can, right off the top of my head, I know of 3 businessmen who I've seen post about that in the last couple of months. Just the problems that they've had with just opening up a business and wanting to open a business and wanting to contribute to the economy of the city, but going through a lot of rigmarole to get things done that seemingly does not happen in other cities of our same size. So what have you guys been doing to try to make the procedure and the process a little bit easier for people who want to do business?
Absolutely. So that's something that that I've learned in the last 2 months that I've been in this interim position, is the difficulties, well, the proclaimed, and some of it is definitely valid, difficulties of, getting business done in the city of Jackson. And at the Tuesday session, we had a lunch and learn Tuesday for Economic Development Week. This question kind of came up from the audience. Again, great question. My approach is looking at internal control procedures and just seeing what steps or what procedures do we have in place now that could be modified, altered, changed, right, as relates to when people come to our counters for the first engagement of a particular project. The next thing then is kind of looking at our ordinances. A lot of stuff that has been in the city of Jackson, I'm not going to say it's outdated, but it could use some updating. Right, and again, I think that in certain elements, my predecessors did a great job at kind of looking at ways we can improve systems, right, and internal controls. The element now is coming in is just understanding the difference in between our communities and other communities as it relates to not boundaries, not geographical boundaries, but just systematic, programmatic boundaries or challenges that we may have. And at this point, that's, if I can be honest with you, my learning curve. So what I need is for these business people to come and express to us, you know what I mean? What is the challenge? Those things that we can improve, modify, I'm interested and willing to do that. Those things that might just be a standard because Jackson is a bigger city, we do have other restrictions and constraints that other bedroom communities don't. Maybe we can figure out how to improve internally to be able to address those things. But I'm interested in kind of hearing from these business people because at the end of the day, my slogan is doing better business. And that's across the board. So if I can hear from them directly and take into consideration some of their concerns, we can do something about it internally to what we can.
What does it look like, for this process becoming digital? I know that has been one of the biggest problems in dealing with the city. Period. Renting venues or anything of the sort. It seems that everywhere you're able to just go in and digitally go in and handle what it is that you need to handle, even if you've got the electronically signed signatures. So still filling out paperwork and doing things in triplicate, that thing has kind of gotten passe for people that are doing business, and it slows the process down as well. So I know that has been a challenge for the city of Jackson, but what have you seen in progress, and what can you say for the people that are listening for that process to go digital and be a little bit easier for people to be able to navigate?
If I chuckle a little bit because there's a saying that says everything that's logical isn't legal. Now we're not talking legalities in this regard, but it ain't as simple as sometimes we wish it was. Because we would love for that, right? And it's just something as simple as the reason why we can't promote as much on social media is because we don't have a credit card policy. I think that maybe we had it in the past, but it's just been something that seems to be safer for the administration to avoid any potential mishaps or what have you. But the reality is that kind of hurts us in a lot of ways when we want to actually spend some programmatic dollars on promoting different things.
Yes, absolutely.
So we face that challenge even internally, right? So where we can, we love to embrace the electronic or digitizing of some of our processes. But right now it's the challenge. That's why we champion OpenGov. OpenGov is the closest thing that's gotten us to that. The parking meters, I know this has been kind of hit or miss controversial.
Is that under you guys' purview? Okay, so we'll talk about that.
But it's the horse before the cart, right? It's that conversation. It's saying, we know we need to improve in these areas, but in the areas that we do have everything we need to make those improvements, we try to go ahead and tighten up on that, even if it might not be in the best timing that the greater majority might feel.
So let's talk about parking meters since you're talking about that. New parking meters downtown is definitely something that the city of Jackson needed to figure out. There is, millions in revenue that we have been losing from not properly collecting, on the parking fees downtown, partially because the meters were old, outdated. Some of them, were tampered with to the point where you couldn't put change into them, for whatever reason. Whoever did it, if you can't get in, it is what it is. But, now, of course, people are like, hey, now all of a sudden now, they're wanting to charge us for parking. Now all of a sudden now, it's the now all of a sudden thing when things have gone on for a while, not realizing that, they were supposed to be happening, but they just weren't happening. So the city didn't just up and decide one day, we're going to start making this electronic and make people, pay for parking, and we're going to start actually collecting on these tickets. Yeah. This didn't just happen, but talk about the process that it took to get us from the old system into this new system, and talk about any hiccups that y'all might have had so far.
Well, yeah, so this thing has been going on, when I got here in 2020, I think in like 2021, there was a sort of a major announcement about us upgrading the parking meters, and it was a trial run around Capitol Street corridor, right on President Street in front of the mayor's, in front of the City Hall. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, that's when I transitioned out of the role shortly after that announcement was made. Mm-hmm. So the reason why I never really went live at that time, I know we allowed then a 30-day or 60-day kind of, not trial period, but what you want to call it, just giving people
grace period,
mm-hmm. right, 30, 60-day grace period then. And I can't speak to what happened with why it was never delivered. But in my return to the city, that was working on it and had got halfway, done with it. And it's now just, all the parking meters, we're going to have 800 of them. They're being installed to this day. We went live May 1st. The biggest challenge now is just kind of, getting the public on board. And, it's something that, we didn't anticipate how difficult the messaging will be, honestly. They have parking meters everywhere you go. Mm-hmm. And it's almost kind of like, even us as city employees, we have parked on the street. So we are affected directly. Yeah. And I was riding around just yesterday, Friday, looking for a park, Right. So anyway, it's something that's affected us. But what I like about this particular situation, that after the city council meeting last week, I reached out to my contact with the parking company to see if we can just kind of get a sit down, hear from the community. Mm-hmm. Because I do understand that our situation isn't as developed or complex as other major cities. Mm-hmm. Meaning when we get out in the city of Jackson, we're going to this one spot. We might be in that spot for an hour or two or maybe mm-hmm. 2 or 3. But the reality is we don't have complementary retail mixes that would make it make sense to spend 5 minutes. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Or to spend 5 minutes going up a parking garage to walk down and grab something. Right. So the parking company is kind of being made aware of that, and they did agree to a meeting. So we're setting that date. We'll have that date this week. But to kind of meet with the greater community, just talk about not having them, because we will have them. We got to have them. Mm-hmm. But what does it look like in this market? This market is different from New Orleans. You know what I mean? So I hope we can come up with something creative, that will satisfy everybody and get us to a point in which, we can kind of have our own way of approaching parking meters or the parking situation.
So to put it in perspective, I don't know if you know a figure right off the top of your head. How much would you say the city of Jackson has lost in revenue from people, parking downtown and the meters not working?
Right. Well, let's just say gross revenue, not getting into the details of the deal, right? Or, who gonna get paid mm-hmm. what. Mm-hmm. 2 million is the number, 2.2 million. So if you multiply 2.2 million a year in gross revenues times, I don't really remember the last time,
years.
Yeah, so even is it safe to say 10 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
easily.
So you multiply 2 million a year.
It could possibly, in some instances, it could be 15, depending on for people who've been parking in downtown, and meters, not working, and those coin operated. And then I think we went to the ones where there are a few that are kind of, you know, computerized. I think, you know, there are places in downtown where that happens, particularly, I think, like in One Jackson Place,
right,
and a few other places. But, you know, you could be looking between 10 and 15 years of parking revenue that we have missed out on. That's correct. I think when citizens are listening to that, because everybody talks about, you know, why can't we do this and why can't we do that? Well, the city is supposed to be producing revenue by several different means, and parking tickets and parking meters are one of those things. It is kind of like our vending machine, so to speak. We're supposed to be able to come by and just get the revenue. If you go to any other city and I tell people all the time, other cities are way more ravenous when it comes to parking. We're blessed to be in the situation that we're in, because you go to any other city, they're towing cars immediately. The parking tickets are exorbitant. The rigmarole that you have to go through to get your car if it's towed, if they will find you if you have a lot of parking tickets. You will get a boot. You will get something on your windshield. So for those of us who, you know, have been spoiled living in the city of Jackson, we don't have those issues. But as more people are coming to the city, this is a way for us to generate revenue. So it's not something that you guys should initially be complaining about right off the bat because you don't know how to use it. But just think about it as the city of Jackson is, you know, creating revenue that's going to help to build the city up at the end of the day. So, but, you know, that is under you guys' kind of watchful eye. And you said you guys are trying to put something together. Yeah, so hopefully this week we'll set a meeting date. We was waiting for the next town hall, but yes, we understand how important this is to the community, so it's something we want to make happen soon. Yeah, so Economic Development Week, let's talk about that a little bit. You know, was this your idea? Was your brainchild? Talk about how this came about. And let's kind of review for those that did not have a chance to attend any of the events. Let's talk about what happened during the week and some of the takeaways. Yeah, let's do it. I cannot take credit for this at all. The most beautiful thing about Economic Development Week is the fact that it was completely collaborative. It was a collaborative effort between the Jackson Redevelopment Authority, Mr. Christopher Pike and his team. Yolanda Owens did a great job at keeping all of us in line over the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks of planning. That's another cool thing, bro. This happened real quickly. So the International Economic Development Council, I interned with them back in 2019 before I came to Jackson in D.C. And the former executive director of Hinds County Economic Development, Tamika Jenkins, is a board member with IEDC. So she kind of brought the idea, from what I understand, as far as let's participate in Economic Development Week. So we all got in a room, and when I'm saying we all, Hinds County Economic Development, Jackson Redevelopment Authority, City of Jackson, and Visit Jackson. Yes. Those were the 4 primary partners, if you will. And it just felt natural. You know, everybody kind of had an idea what they wanted to do. And the city's primary role in that was helping to promote and get the word out, and sharing, you know, pertinent information, participating in the week. So Monday we hosted Hinds County Economic Development hosted a breakfast Monday in their office. The city did the press announcement, and the mayor issued a proclamation on that Monday afternoon. Tuesday we had a lunch and learn where we hosted a panel, and that was the 4 of us was representative of that panel. Yeah. And we had about 125 people to come to that, and that was a great situation, bro. I mean, we was in there for 2 hours, and you know, people can get a little itchy after about an hour, but people were engaged. And to me, what the participation or the turnout, what that showed us was that people are interested in what we said at the beginning of this conversation. We ready to talk about economic development. People are ready to talk about business. It's a hot button topic. Yeah, that's correct. People are ready to try to figure out what can they do, and I'm talking about the business community. So on that Wednesday, we Cathead hosted us at. We had a networking event that Wednesday. Probably had 80 people to come to that. Again, good crowd, and I love the age diversity. It was a lot of young people. A lot of younger people. They and I'm talking about people that own property, that's renovating property. That's what you need to tap into. If I'm being quite honest, got to tap into that demographic. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, well, that's what we hear. Again, I always appreciated that about myself and just my background and how I got here, being able to relate to that demographic. You know what I mean? So then Thursday was bus tour. That was great too. So we had an overwhelming amount. I think that we were only able to it was 1 charter bus, so that's what 35 passengers or something like that. But we had about 60 to 70 people to show interest. So that's the one thing I think we might run back. So JRA hosted that bus tour, and that evening they had a community event. During the bus tour, we went around to their sites and just talked about future development.
Stopped at the convention center with Cherie Miller. She told us about the program they got at the convention center. I talked about the development across the street from the convention center. And that was Thursday. Friday, Visit Jackson hosted something in there with basically another lunch and learn about tourism in their offices. So it was good. The energy was great, bro. Like, I ain't gonna lie, like, you know, and it's good. I'm glad that I can end the week when I thought about, you know, when you hit me up, like, ending the week with this conversation.
Well, it's good. I mean, I saw it all happening. I saw, you know, the bus tour. I saw people talking about it, so there was some buzz. And I thought that was good because there's never been this type of buzz before. There's never really been, you know, and this is not a slight to anybody that's been in that office before, but there's never really been a huge effort to get an outreach and kind of inform the public. You know, Mike Davis does a great job of going and talking about doing business with the city, and he always has. But outside of that, you know, the regular citizenry needs to know about what's happening within your office so they can talk about it intelligently. I think one of our biggest problems is people just make up stuff. They just make up scenarios. They say things just based upon what they think they know, and a lot of times a lot of bad information gets into the turnpike because people just really don't know what they're talking about. So to be able to see it firsthand, I think is important. You know, what are some of the things that you heard as far as feedback? What were some of the takeaways from these folks taking these bus rides and, you know, all the things y'all had? It
was just what you just said, bro. Like, and that's why we knew we wanted it for the layman. Right, this wasn't for the elected officials. This wasn't for, you know, the people in economic development. This was for the everyday person that's interested in knowing what's going on in Jackson. So they were impressed in a lot of ways. A lot of times they showed, you know, the discernment of just being able to feel something different. It's a different energy. And they had a lot of questions. The biggest topic or interest seemed to be housing. People just asking about housing development. The other thing was just, you know, about other economic development opportunities around the city. So the feedback was great, and they're looking forward to doing it again. You know, so yeah, it was a great time.
So how has it been? You know, one of the other issues that we had. I mean, and I think, you know, one of the things that we have to do is be honest with ourselves and be transparent and just tell the truth, not to, you know, point a finger at anybody and not to place blame and not to say, hey, this, and that, and the other. But, you know, JRA has been a roadblock and a stumbling block for a lot of the things that have happened. That body has not been as effective as it is needed to be. There were some people on that body that were kind of stagnant. There's a new set of people on this body now, and I have seen them, you know, be more vocal and be more open. I think, you know, the addition of my classmate Yolanda, I think, has been, you know, amazing, and, you know, things have improved, you know, over leaps and bounds. So talk about you guys' relationship with JRA and what are some of the things you've seen that have been good and have changed and evolved into making this relationship better.
Yeah, you hit it on the head, bro. Like, the mayor did a great job at placing people on that board or kind of making board movements, right? You know, you said it already. Like, you know, when I got here in 2020, the energy on the board was just kind of,
it was dead.
It was dead. If it wasn't dead, it was negative, right? And I think that when we in a situation as we are, in such a situation as we are in Jackson, if we don't need nothing else, we need positive energy, bro.
Yes.
Period. You know what I'm saying? Just at least everybody just touch and agree and hug and love on each other and say, you know what, I'm going to give my best shot with no malice, no negative energy. So anyway, you know, they made some great board appointments. When they hired Toya Cutts, I think was the first director they hired when I got here. Toya was cool, you know, from Atlanta, but it, you know, again, you see it's interesting when people have to try to figure out how to acclimate to doing business in Mississippi. Chris Pike, the guy that they got now, you know, we have a good relationship. Chris has some good experiences and he has a good attitude, so I look forward to working with him. That's why I said that the Economic Development Week, this was cool because this was like all of our first times locking in with each other and going through a transaction, for the lack of better words.
Yes.
Right? And the attitudes, the collaboration, when stuff kind of, you know, because stuff is going to go wrong, but when things go wrong, like, how do people react and respond to it? And the energy throughout was just good and supportive and positive. So I'm excited about what's going on at JRA. The biggest announcement from my perspective, again, I will not speak for their business, but You know, they put out the RFPs on Fair Street, and they have gotten some respondents, and they have kind of been going through, you know, the deal structure, from what I understand, with some of those respondents. So that's movement that we haven't seen in a long time. I think they have secured $5 million for Union Station improvements. That's huge. So I'm very proud of what's going on at JRA, and so yeah, I salute to the board and, you know, to Chris Pike over there. Y'all doing a great job.
Which is good, because, you know, people have, you know, have their opinions and their say on what's happening at Union Station. A lot of these instances, you just need to have people, you know, on that line and on that wall that are taking care of that. A lot of it was just, there was not a particular person that was taking a look at it, and because there's a lot of stuff going on, some things, you know, happen to fall through the cracks. Right. Now that you actually have somebody paying attention to it, you got some live bodies on it, you know, here we go, $5 million in funding secured for Union Station. So now those upgrades that are needed, those things that are necessary to make Greyhound and make the Greyhound terminal look like it needs to look, and the train terminal look how it needs to look, those are the things that we need. We know that we are not getting the support from the legislature that we need. We know that pretty much anything that's going to help the city of Jackson is going to get vetoed. So we're out here by ourselves, really to fend for ourselves. So it's good to hear that. You know, you taking that bus trip, how optimistic were you when, you know, I can tell you all kinds of stories about Fair Street and dealing with the JRA then, you know, back in, you know, the mid 2010s or the early 2000s. You know, how optimistic are you now that we could see some life on Fair Street?
That's a great question. Well, I am optimistic, first of all, but I know we had real conversations. So, I mean, it's still an uphill battle, not because of the organizations and their efforts, not even because totally of the respondents. Market pressures, you know, when we start talking about structuring deals and raising capital, being bankable, just the way that markets are valued tends to present the biggest problem. And being able to have local developers that have the financial position, the capital position, as well as like the infrastructure, the business infrastructure in place to deliver a deal, you know, we still got mountains to climb. And again, you know, not to get it off Fair Street, but I can say that about one of my projects, and that's the Convention Center Hotel development. You know, we would like to think that we could just, you know, not snap our fingers, but, you know, if it was easy to do,
it would have been done.
That's correct. It wouldn't have taken 15 years. You know what I mean, for us to get in this position. So I am optimistic that something will happen on Fair Street. Facts. Even if it come down to the redevelopment authority taking individual spaces, and I'm not speaking for Chris right now, but taking individual spaces and developing them one at a time and putting a tenant in them. Right. At this point, I think that the synergy that's going on around Fair Street, all that, we got a lot of philanthropic interest around Fair Street. You know, Fuse. So that's who's hiring Yolanda. You know, she's a Fuse fellow. We have Kellogg money on Fair Street. We have Bloomberg money on Fair Street. So there's a lot of interest that's going on, and we know how serious it is. But I am very optimistic that hopefully within the next 24 to 36 months or 2 to 3 years, we'll be able to see some new investment coming into Fair Street.
How many conversations do y'all have? How involved is your department with them in talks about Fair Street particularly?
So I participate in their board meetings. So that to that degree. Right, but previously, prior to them having an executive director, my relationship with their board chair, Alex Lawson, I mean, we talked almost daily. So again, the city doesn't necessarily get into day-to-day operations of JRA's dealings with Fair Street, but from a programmatic planning strategy and just, you know, political support perspective, you know, we're there with them, there for them. But that's to the degree in which I've been involved.
So. Things are looking up. Things are looking optimistic. You guys are really, you know, making yourselves visible as best as possible. So let's talk about a few of the things that some of the citizens need to know about. Let's talk about this facade grant that you guys have now that's available for small businesses. If you are a small business owner in the city of Jackson, I think this is some important information that you need to know. Again, we're about informing people, making sure that you have all the tools to be as successful as you possibly can. A lot of people don't know this because maybe they don't read, maybe they don't get on Facebook, maybe they don't scroll. But there are facade grants that are available for small businesses. Explain to folks what a facade grant is and how can they be eligible for one of these.
So the facade grant is an improvement on your what we call consumer experience, whether that is the visual element of it, right? You know, fixing up your outside areas, right? Or if it is making improvements with restrooms or service lines or just different things, whatever the custom experience is, that's, I guess, how I would define it, facade grant. This particular grant is funded by CDBG CV money, so this is from COVID. So it was kind of playing into resilience. So the money is kind of best used for being able to make your businesses more sustainable or resilient in the case that we have another pandemic. Okay. So if that's doing electronic hand washing stations, if that's, you know, doing automatic doors, if that's doing self-cleaning bathrooms, I just threw that one out there. Yeah. If it's self-cleaning bathrooms, anything that could make your space be more resilient against any type of natural disaster or COVID-related type of situation, that's pretty much what we're targeting these dollars for. Applicants had to have been in business 2 years prior to COVID. Okay. And they can receive up to, if I'm not mistaken, up to $40,000. Okay. So that's the basis of it. We do want people to apply. They can go online and apply at cityofjackson.gov. I don't know exactly.
So they can be any small business that was in business at least 2 years before COVID.
That's correct. And now you make me think, how do we define small business?
Yes, and you know, there's a lot of brick and mortar business in the city. So is that for everybody? Is there any other particular ramifications that you have to go through? So it's not just being in the city of Jackson and being a small business, of course, once you define it, but you know, what are some of the other things so that people can know exactly who's who?
You know, now we structured this when I was there in 2020, so you because they've been there for about 12 years. Okay. So you testing me right now if I remember exactly. So I think it was less than $1 million in annual revenue, gross revenues. I think it was less than 5 or 10 employees. And of course you had to be in a CDBG eligible census tract area. So I hate to tell the people, don't quote me exactly on that, but yes, less than $1 million in gross revenue and less than, I think, 10 employees. You got to be in a CDBG eligible census tract.
Okay. And they need to have, what kind of paperwork do they need to have?
Now that's a lot. Definitely business licenses, definitely need to be signed up as a business with the city of Jackson. In insurance certification, like it's probably about 30 or 40 documents. Like that's the part that we were trying to figure out how to kind of simplify to a certain degree. Because we do want to try to make these funds easy for people to get. So forgive me for not running that list of documents down, but all this information, definitely go to the City of Jackson website. You can find the information online.
So you talked a little bit about what the money can be used for. Be a little bit more specific, because sometimes people get a lump sum of money, they get a grant, and they may take it and they may decide to go, I want to fix my oven, or I want to fix my grease trap over here. So, you know, what kind of parameters and what can you not do when you get these funds?
Well, it's definitely not for acquiring a new building. It's not for major renovations. Even though, you know, in the grant world, if improving your bathroom turns into you renovating your bathroom, as long as it speaks to resiliency, then that will be applicable. Can't buy new equipment. You know, you can't pay salaries with it. You can't pay utility bills with it. So that's what I would say are not the eligible expenses.
Right. So is there a person that, you know, folks can call and, you know, be their watchdog and say, hey, do y'all have somebody that goes around? How do you discern what's happening when these funds are dispersed?
Absolutely. So I would say Yika Hoover, who's the Deputy Director of Economic Development at the city. Let me see if I got Yika number in here. But her email is yhoover, HOOVER @jacksonms.gov. If I can find it real quick, cause Yika my right hand woman. They've been running these programs. And Mike, Dave, you mentioned Mike too. Mike will be a wealth of knowledge on this.
Yes.
As well. So now I don't have a personal cell phone. I ain't gonna do it like that.
Look it up on Google, y'all.
Yeah, Yikahover, Yikahover.
And she's in your department.
That's correct. Second floor hood building.
So what do you guys have coming up? What are some things that the citizenry needs to know about that your department specifically is working on to help to get this city back on track? Well, not back on track, continue it on its progressive and positive path that it's on.
Man, look, so one initiative that I want to roll out is what I'm calling internal tourism. Visit Jackson does an excellent job at what I call external tourism.
Yes.
Promoting outside of the city of Jackson to the greater world in order to attract their interest in coming spending their money here.
Yep.
But what we noticed was a gap in between promoting our assets in Jackson to Jacksonians, right? Or to, the metro area.
Yes.
Meaning the museum. Museum tours at the convention center. People love to say that much stuff ain't going on in the convention center, but the convention center probably hosts about, I don't know, 10 or 20 regional tournaments. Like they had an Olympics something going on in the convention center about 2-3 weeks ago. Yep. Basketball championships, cheerleading, volleyball. They have I don't want to call it midget wrestling, but like bare knuckle. It's all kind of cool stuff that go on at the convention center that we need to do a better job as a city of making sure that the
convention center is back under the cities.
That's correct, management. Okay. Yeah, that's correct. So it was they had been doing a third party manager for years.
It didn't work.
Yeah, it did not work. But now the convention center, from what I understand, is they're on the track to make more revenues than they have ever made. Yeah. And that's something to the tune of about $3.5 million or something like that. But convention center been killing it. So and other tourism assets. We should do a better job at welcoming regional tourism to the city and promoting that to Jacksonians. So that's one thing. The convention center hotel development, like I told the people on the tour, I don't want to talk about it too much because we've been talking about it for 15 years, but I will say that we just recently closed the SOQ, Statement of Qualifications. This is our first time in 15 years getting 3 institutional developers. Okay. So that's promising. Now, we still got a lot of work to do, but the reality is to have people actively discussing and doing business. Like that's the, just do business. You know what I'm saying? And
do good business.
Yeah, do good business. So we're excited about that. A thing that I don't think we talk about enough is the program that's going on at Smithfield Stadium. Tim Bennett, which is the guy that delivered the Mississippi Braves Stadium in Pearl and the Biloxi Shucker Stadium, he has the management contract over at Smithfield Stadium. It is tagged as the Hank Aaron Sports Academy. So Hank Aaron had his hands on this deal, prior to him passing away. And they just announced a Legacy League that will be taking place at Smithfield Stadium in 2025. So basically, the neighboring cities, Brandon, Pearl, of course, Jackson, will have their own baseball teams, for the lack of better words, which will be made up of collegiate players between in the United States, but also from Columbia. So we got a sister city. Well, we're structuring considering a sister city agreement with Rio Negro, Colombia. Okay. So they'll be kind of, bringing, and a lot of the baseball players have been coming out of Dominican. Yes. Yeah. So absolutely. The next move and what we've seen is happening in Colombia. So that's exciting. And then we got a big announcement that's coming up on May 21st at the convention. I think it's going to be at the Convention Center or the Mississippi Art Museum. I cannot talk about that, but in 2 weeks on the 21st. That's something that we're excited about. We've been working on for a long time. So we just trying to do better business, man. And
it sounds good, man. I mean, I'm excited. I see that there is a new energy being involved, and it's good to have folks. Just to be honest, it's good to have people that actually come outside and actually go out and actually go to functions in the city of Jackson, are young enough to kind of get out and catch the pulse of what's happening. We have not had that before. A lot of good people, that's cool, but you can't stay confined in the office, and you definitely have to go out after 5. You definitely have to go out and go to these venues and these restaurants and actually see and hear what people are talking about to understand it. So you guys go out as consumers all the time, so you can actually see and hear those things, and that is extremely important. Having the right people who, are around the right people to help, generate the energy
That's correct,
that, you know, is responsible for this change that you guys are doing. So I saw it. I know a lot of other people saw it as well. That's why I wanted to have you on today to kind of talk about that and fill folks in. If folks want to get in touch with you, they have any questions, any comments, any of those things, give them the contacts to get in touch with you.
So my email is jkeeton@jacksonms.gov, and my work phone is 601-720-2983. But I appreciate your candor, Brad, because that's important to me to be a part of the culture, bro.
Yeah.
And I'm not from Jackson, but I went to Jackson State. You know, Jackson is my second home. But at the end of the day, I'm for the culture. And I think that if we can figure it out in Jackson, bro, like this will be the prototype. You see what I'm saying? Because you know, it's for us, by us. We have the highest concentration of African Americans in the United States. We got the highest concentration of African American elected officials in the state of Mississippi.
Absolutely.
So one thing I just want to let the culture know is we all have a part. And when we start talking about economics, we're talking about numbers, we're talking about data. Everybody plays a part in what value add does their data bring.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So we're talking about educational attainment, household values, property values, median incomes. You know what I mean? Like, we got to start thinking about that as a collective.
It's about numbers at the end of the day, man. It's about numbers and results, and you guys are getting it. Y'all are making some changes. So, you know, you heard it here on the Good Things Jackson show. We're about changing the narrative about our city. We are not who they say that we are. We actually got some people working and doing some things. The Office of Economic Development and Planning in the city of Jackson is making some moves under this gentleman's tutelage right now as the interim director. Shouts out to the Jackson Redevelopment Authority. They got some new fresh blood and energy over there as well. And we're actually seeing some changes, some visible changes, so that people can actually know what's going on and not just, you know, make up stuff by happenstance. Because when they don't see anything, that doesn't mean that they're not talking. It just means that they're going to make up their own story. So that now you guys are being able to present that story, and they can see the facts as it happens. They can take these tours. They can see things. I really definitely want y'all to continue the bus tours. I think letting people get down there and actually get eyes on and hands on seeing what's going on Ferris Street to understand how that works, I think that's really important as well. So, Jhai Keeton, Interim Director of the Planning and Economic Development Department for the City of Jackson, telling us about all the good things, Jackson, that they have going on. Of course, we appreciate you guys for tuning in with us today. Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers, all of you people who are out there enjoying your day. I hope you took a moment to kind of listen to